MadLab Performance presents The Lab Podcast. Here's your host and chief mad scientist, Dan Gilbert.
Hello and welcome everybody to The Lab. I'm here with Alec Bulat, executive producer, fitness coach. Alec, how you feeling?
Pretty solid, Dan. Pretty solid. How you doing?
Excellent. Now that I got your name right, since I call you Alex all the time, so we switched to Alec. I wanted to tell everybody that, and I did not have to, but I admitted it, and I did.
Yeah, just for clarification, Alec is my legal name. Aleko is a nickname that I've had since I was
today. We just gave it
baby.
To him.
Yeah.
That's Luke Hillman over here on the couch. Luke, you do a million different things for us. Fitness professional, podcaster, ruler of all the lands, capitalist monster, and the wolf dog. Once again, no explanation at all. Today's podcast is brought to you by FNX Fitness. If you're looking for a supplement company that will help you rise up, look no further than FNX Fitness. With products ranging from recharge to help amp up your workout, restart for your AM protein blend, or rebalance for all of your green, super green needs, actually. Whether it be gaining muscle or just looking to live a healthier life, FNX will help you get there. For 15% off of all FNX products, use the code, Alec, MadLab, capital M, capital L.
That is correct.
MadLab, yes. For 15% off, put that in your cart at checkout, and that way we can get you closer to all of your nutritional goals. Gentlemen, what are we talking about today?
Pause for a second. What was that nickname
Which one?
that you just gave Luke? Yeah.
That's just a
What
noise.
was that? Yeah. That was the nickname?
That's like that's Luke's overall demeanor coming through, or possibly a Bob Kennedy impression. Shout out to Bob Kennedy, but it could be either one of those. Could be a million other things.
I feel like I really had to note that before we continued on with today's episode.
It's no Disco Biscuit with a story.
No.
That's for sure.
Not a real one, but it's a story.
Hey, whoa.
Real stories are not as
Are
important.
you telling me that's not a real story?
No, it's not a real story.
Damn. No, I knew that already.
Okay.
But
I did not.
I want to believe it's a real story.
I believe it.
Middle school dance.
Yeah, middle school dance. Gentlemen, we're podcasting today, right?
We are
talking about
podcasting.
something. We have a subject.
Yes, we do.
Oh, what is it?
Today's subject is on basketball and how to train in the gym and how potentially not to train in the gym for basketball.
The train athletes in basketball, and I know this because on the first time ever, I did our promo.
It's true.
Although I feel like you should do all the promos moving forward still.
Nah,
So
that
that's
was
my vote.
solid, man. That was good. Give yourself some
I
credit.
don't
Big
know.
pat on the back.
Luke Hillman, you've dabbled in the game of basketball.
A little bit.
Give us something that you think that basketball players should do that you find that a lot of them don't do. Like you find like one of the biggest issues with basketball training.
Lack thereof. Or it's just an over trying to think of the word, like really hyper focused on skills training and jumping, which
Right.
sounds like, yeah, should you work on jumping? Yeah. But having someone just like relentlessly box jump does not get them better. You need the weight training aspect in there. And then you also need to work on power and explosiveness. I actually feel like if you're going to train a basketball player and you're not working on power and explosiveness, you're failing them.
I would say like any athlete.
Well, yeah.
Right? But I do see a failing that in basketball an awful lot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff, skills training obviously is really important.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Specificity is the most important thing in any sport. But you also want your players to be able to move well. You want them to be strong. You want them to be explosive. And if you're not doing anything, you don't have a strength and conditioning program for them. They're not going to hit. They're not going to hit their athletic ceiling. Starts with a P is what I was
Peak.
trying to go
Peak.
with. Peak.
Yeah.
I have a different
potential.
word for potential.
There we go.
Yeah, I know. Things are difficult today. I did the promo in one take, and that's all my brain could handle. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So-
So actually, I have a quick question. So, kind of going off of that, I think basketball is an interesting one because similar to, at least in comparison to football, similar to soccer, there's a lot more of an actual like conditioning aspect to it, right? Because you have to have the actual aerobic capacity to continue go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So how would you break down the importance of like power and strength work, outside of the actual skills stuff, right? Power and strength work and the actual aerobic capacity work.
The unique way with aerobic capacity with basketball is it's much easier to play a basketball game than it is to play a football game. So honestly, if you want to get in shape for basketball, play basketball. And I know that sounds pretty like black and white, but honestly, don't go run a mile. Don't go long distance run. Play basketball.
You can even have just
playing,
yourself shooting.
Yeah.
Right. So like you can even have somebody shooting, because I used to do this all the time. And you shoot like you play in a game. So I might take a 3-point shot and then explode after it, whether I make it or not. Or maybe like if I make it, I have to do a layup. If I miss it, I have to go run back out to the 3-point line. That way you're working on your skills and you're constantly moving at 100%. And you don't do anything. You just time yourself, put yourself on for a minute, go for 100%, rest a little bit, go 100% again. And I think if more people did that, A, they'd be a better condition for the game. But also B, your shooting and your touch in game would be so much better, because you're only going to get so good just doing slow shot after slow shot, just barely moving around. Like I take a 3-pointer, miss it, bounce off the rim, I slow jog after it, get ready to take another one, or I just have somebody passing me balls. Unless I'm working on a specific aspect of my form that I've screwed up, the best way to do it is act like it's real game reps.
Yeah, so like, the old adage, you play as hard as you practice.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you're just sitting there taking these slow set shots nonstop, how translatable is that? I mean, even a set shot in a game, you have to run and get in position. Typically, you'll have to cut to get open, some sort of movement. If you're not able to, catch and shoot or be able to move to that capacity, you're not going to be able to.
It's kind of like it's kind of the same way that you would teach anybody anything, right? You want to teach somebody to be explosively when they're jumping, right?
Yeah.
You want to teach them to have a higher vertical. If they don't squat well and their squat is all over the place, their jump is going to be all over the place, and their landing is going to be all over the place.
Yeah.
So you need to slow down the movement, get the things that you need. Once you have that, though, you need to work on power, right? So once you have your shot down, you have it as you want it, then you need to be moving at game speed and shooting at the same time, because that's probably what's going to happen.
There's
right?
two things I do want to touch on, though. Is one thing that's kind of unique about basketball is it's kind of coming up now, but for some reason it's in the past. Like lifting weights and playing basketball has never been a brother-sister relationship for some reason. You always see that with football and more of those physical sports. Basketball is still a physical sport, in my opinion, but there's not as much of an emphasis on weightlifting in basketball. It's come a long way, and I think I see it implemented more. I mean, honestly, Michael Jordan's really the pioneer for that when it comes to weightlifting in basketball.
Well, he hasn't had a lot of success, so
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there isn't that systematic relationship?
Well, it was always the fear that lifting weights will ruin your shot. Mm-hmm. When it comes to that, honestly, from someone who's actually like didn't lift weights and started to lift weights, and then the key is just in the process of programming, you're still shooting. Mm-hmm. Like if you're a basketball player, you should be shooting every day. There's actually no excuse. You should be shooting every single day. Even if one day you can only get 100 shots, get your 100 shots up. But if anything, it improves your shot. Okay, when you're stronger, there's less room for error in your technique. Like you ever seen people in their technique, they have to go kind of sling it all the way back to draw power and stuff like that.
Or when they get tired, it's harder for them to get the legs under them, to get their arms under them, stuff like that. There's less room for error.
And then there's been, I think, a hyper side of this where you have a lot of basketball players that are lifting weights and they're doing like deadlifting and stuff like that, which is great. But then also they're going right into like all these games. So they're not actually recovering. Mm-hmm. And I think that is also causing some injury issues. And actually, I think it's something that you see actually in the NBA a lot.
You also get people that confuse any kind of weight room activity with bodybuilding all the time. And you see it in high school all the time. And that will ruin your shot.
100%.
Right? So if you start to just grow muscle and you're not working on staying flexible and moving well, then This actually did happen to me in high school. I used to, my junior year, had a crazy 3-point shot. And then my senior year, it fell off tremendously. And I couldn't understand why. But I got so tight in my lats that when I would pull up to shoot, my elbow would just push out.
Were you just like benching nonstop?
Yeah, all the
Yeah,
time. I was
honestly-
benching, doing pull downs all the time, and so like for me to keep my elbow in, I had to force my elbow in all the time, and that made it so much harder to have touch on my shot. So I like if I didn't concentrate on that, my shot was way off. It wasn't coming natural anymore.
Yeah.
So that is something that can happen, but again,
But were you shooting
yes,
every day?
yeah, I was shooting every day. But I lifted. I mean, I was in the weight room 3 times a day.
Well, so then that goes back to what I was saying.
Yeah, I played a lot of basketball, so I play at
Then
least
you
twice
weren't
a day.
recovering either.
No, I didn't do any recovering. And again, all I did was bodybuilding exercises because I
what you
did
knew.
want to get better at sports, but I thought of the lifting like, you're in high school, you just want to get bigger and stronger and then be able to, like you want to attract girls and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's why you bench.
Well, and that's the biggest thing. You see what you're talking about, and then you see another aspect of it where basketball training will turn into like a powerlifting meet.
That'll happen too. Yeah.
Like, I'll be honest with you. If you can pull 600 pounds deadlift, that's probably not going to do anything for you on the court.
Well,
One time,
it would to a certain extent if that is your goal. Your sole goal was to get up to 600 pounds. There's other things that you could be doing that would be much more beneficial on the court. But if you took somebody that could deadlift 200 pounds, somebody that could deadlift 600 pounds, given the same skills, I'd rather have the 600-pound deadlifter. But if the 600-pound deadlifter had to put in, 10 more hours a week, and the 200-pound deadlifter put in 10 more hours a week on the basketball court and with skills, and then like maybe some decelerative movements and working on some symmetry and stuff, then I'd probably rather have that. Although I just told like a big difference in strength.
I think Luke, what Luke's trying to say though, and correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially going back to the sports specificity of it, right? Is like, if you're trying to be the best basketball player that you can be, you shouldn't be training like you're trying to deadlift for a powerlifting.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, agreed.
If you're pulling that much weight, that means you're training powerlifting.
True.
You're not going to get up to a 600-pound deadlift by training for your sport.
Like you have people that do their 1 rep max 3 times or 4 times in a basketball season, like during the season.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Which makes
it
no
happens.
sense.
It happens all the time.
You see people 1 rep maxing every week. I mean, that's just, you know what I mean? I mean,
wild.
It's wild.
Yeah. It's true though. I mean, especially when you're looking at high schoolers.
Yeah.
I mean, really, even some of the college programs you look at, you see that like, all right, well, we just had an athlete
All
tell us
belted up.
that they were doing one. Yeah, true.
Wrapped. That stuff, you don't have that when you're on the court.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think that makes a difference. So, I mean,
We talked about this
Football podcast.
football.
Yeah, because we were talking the same thing about how so many of the
Like,
high school
that's
programs,
exactly right,
strength
yeah.
programs will just have you max out constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, and two, one thing I want to touch on, like before we started this, Alec, you brought up the differences in positions and training wise. I feel like there might be some minute differences, but you just got to look how the game's played.
Can you, because this is a really good point. Can you tell us, like, one, how the game is played, but like how the game used to be played versus how it's played now?
Yeah.
Because you talked about that earlier, and I thought that was really interesting. I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Yeah, I mean, the game, used to be played more inside out. So the big guy...
Outside in.
Inside out.
Inside out would be like I throw it down low and then pitch it back out and shoot.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so like because the big
All right.
guys control the game.
Right.
That was the big thing. So they look at all like the legends, even from like Jordan's era. A lot of them are big.
Oh,
guys.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
offense
yeah.
starts with the big guy.
Right. I got you.
These days, it's get out and run. So it's more of a guard-focused league. Even the big guys are stepping out, going off the dribble. I mean, even pick up like one of the guys you mentioned was like, for instance, like Joel Embiid, who still is a low post player, pretty strong down there, but he still goes outside, goes off the dribble, and stuff like that. So when you look at that, I feel like overall you can pretty much train everyone in a similar fashion. The biggest thing is because of the way the game's played is the first step. You want a quick, explosive first step because you want to get by your guy, get the offense going, and get
Make
out
the
and run.
defense react.
That's what it is. You're constantly running. So also, I mean, with that too, you can argue that durability is actually more important now than ever because you could argue there's more miles that these players have to.
And somebody would argue that the like the older game would be you need more durability, but
you did. I don't want to take. No, you did need durability.
true, you did. But I
In
feel
a
like
different way.
I feel like you needed more toughness
You did.
than durability.
100%.
Because the durability, where most injuries do come off of exhaustion, major injuries too, exhaustion and volume, right?
Yeah.
And that is what today's game is.
I will say you see a lot of
otherwise, you're going to get more.
Achilles tears.
Yeah, you're going to get more. The old game, you're going to get more bruises and some lacerations and stuff like that. But that a lot of times stuff that you can just patch up, ice up, and keep going. Where now we're looking at, like you said, ACL tears, Achilles tears. I don't know why I was going to say beheadings.
What?
I don't know how my brain works.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Go on. I was going to say, take us away, Luke. Take us away.
Where was I at?
I don't know. People's heads are falling.
I was going to say, apparently,
and pets' heads are falling.
Dan's
off?
watching a very different NBA than we are.
That's right. Bill Lambier's NBA. All right. So you were talking about the inside out game versus the what would you call it? Outside. Okay.
You can call it outside in. I don't really like that. To your point, I just say get out and run. That's what it reminds me of.
Like a transitional game.
Transitional game, and that's 100% what it is right now.
I also think that when you're doing conditioning, like if you're doing conditioning in the gym, just like a lot of other sports, you have to work on transitions because those transitions are exhausting for an athlete. So like if somebody's moving laterally and then all of a sudden you're sprinting forward and then you're moving backwards and then you're sliding on defense slide, like you should emulate some of those movements in your actual conditioning, in your weight room conditioning. I think that's important. So continue.
No. And then, so from an aesthetic standpoint, things I could, if you want to get super technical, I did think, and you saw us if you ever watched like The Last Dance with Jordan, and the reason why I bring up Jordan is because he was the pioneer when it came to the weight room. I do believe, like from an aesthetic standpoint, typically in basketball, you want broader shoulders, a little bigger back. At the same sense, like even though it's a quick game, you still are going to get some contact. You want to be able to bump off your defender. Stuff like that makes it easier. You know what I mean? Also
because that way, if you're driving and
you can absorb more contact
without having to
adjust your shot as much.
Thank you, man.
And
he really did. I couldn't think of my brain.
I was going to say, that was like a MadLibs right
you
there.
like
just finishes my sentences for me. What a bond we have.
A good example of this is if you're familiar with what Russell Westbrook's game, that explosiveness. But he's broad. He's
an
tough.
insane athlete.
He is, and he's strong up top as well. And when he can take the contact, and he doesn't have to switch up his shot as much.
Probably one of your top 3 favorite players ever, too.
Not top 3, but I definitely like Russell.
All right.
Yeah. But yeah, so he would be like an embodiment of that, and he's a very physical player. If you want to go into what's really important for a basketball player, I feel like lateral speed is a must. I actually think lateral speed, in a way, is undervalued.
Would you say lateral, because basketball lateral can be different because the way that you play defense can be different than the way you would train lateral speed in some other sports, right?
Yeah, I mean, you still got to be able to transition from a lateral movement into like a sprint. So like typically,
you wouldn't want to be able to transfer from like a slide into a sprint. Especially if like
you want to be able to do that.
Yeah. Where a lot of things you're not going to slide. Like a lot of sports you're not going to slide, right?
Like if we take
defense
football,
is different.
Football as an example, right?
Yeah,
like there's not going to be very many times where you're going to be doing that type of motion, right?
Yeah,
yeah, not
it's
often.
Quick cuts more so than it is like an actual like side to side transition, and then
you might move a couple sliding without crossing your feet in football, but then you're usually going to commit pretty quick. Where basketball, you're sliding a lot, and you're sprinting to either transition or recover. So that is something that I think does get undervalued.
I also think what's really important is, and it's important in a lot of sports, but single leg strength, and I guess you could use like stability. But I mean, if you look at a lot of these guys, they're taking shots off one leg. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a real thing. You watch a game, and it's because you need that type of coordination, you need that type of strength to be able to do that.
And also, you're trying to separate, so you're not always going to be able to set up with 2 feet and shoot. And the better you can do that, the better off you are. So I think your single leg movement is extremely important. I think that's also a mistake in the weight room that a lot of people make in a lot of sports, certainly basketball, is there's an emphasis constantly on barbell deadlift, barbell back squat, barbell bench press, when most of the games,
if I'm training a basketball player,
are unilateral.
We're barely benching.
Yeah.
The only reason we're going to bench is because I don't want imbalance.
Right.
In like, you know what I mean? That's the only reason. We're not benching because it's going to make you a better basketball player.
So to be honest, if this was me in the case, if I was training a basketball player, I would scrap a traditional barbell deadlift as well.
I was going to get.
I was going to say I don't even see the point of doing that.
I would probably have them do that if they could not do it, but once they had the movement down.
Can I pitch an argument here for this? I would say, to his point, at the end of the day, when you're training an athlete, what's the most important thing?
That they can
that they can actually get on the field,
translate,
or in this case, the court.
The best ability is availability.
Yeah, it's the best of it. Hex bar deadlift traditionally is a safer variation than the barbell.
Yeah.
I don't want to touch the barbell. Could I get some of my athletes to do the barbell? Probably fine. Yeah. At the end of the day, my job is to make you better on the court. If you
if you have a bunch of kids and you have them for like a month or 2 months, then maybe your time is probably wasted.
It's
on
pretty
the barbell.
limited.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's not a lot of time for that technical, like repetition capacity, right?
Because
it's like on a lower end of what we were talking about with the power clean. Wait, did we cover that in the power clean?
Yeah, we did. We essentially were talking about like just like how, like there's certain motions that you have to do, and then the power clean might not just be the best motion in general, is what we were saying.
The best use of your time.
Exactly. Best use of your time because it's so technical. Same kind of idea. Go ahead, Luke.
So I mean, my point is like, is there a difference between hex bar and straight bar? Obviously. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about athletic performance, what we want to get out of it, how much better is the straight bar going to do than the hex bar? Are we talking like this? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like very minute differences. And I don't think that it's honestly worth doing a barbell deadlift. Yeah. Like I said, if I got blessed to train a professional athlete, not doing a barbell. I
was going to say, if I was stuck into a position right now where I was the head strength and conditioning coach of a collegiate basketball program, barbell deadlift wouldn't even be on my list.
Yeah,
because I need their off-season stuff.
I think about like when
you can argue back and forth.
No,
but
I would agree with you.
Yeah, it's like there's other ways. Once again, similar to what we were talking about with the clean, right? And once again, the power clean is a good movement. Explosive motion, right? And for a lot of programs, it's a staple for like football programs and stuff like that.
I would do barbell RDLs. That's an issue.
That's what I was gonna say. Is there's gonna be other ways to stimulate like glute and hamstring development that I would use in essentially.
With a barbell.
Yeah, with a barbell.
Or the same kind of movement.
Exactly. Yeah. So what you're saying is like I like the idea of doing RDLs way more, right? With a basketball player.
RDL single leg.
Either one.
RDLs.
Both. I'd rather have them be doing RDLs, right, than just a standard traditional barbell deadlift. But even then, right, like I think it's once again
I think you would still have your same argument there.
The technical capacity. I think you could teach, and this is just from my subjective experience, is you can teach an RDL a little bit more effectively than from a barbell deadlift all the way from the ground, right? But you can also put it out on pads and stuff. Regardless, I guess what I'm trying to say is like,
if you get them the hex bar, you can get them the barbell.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, because mostly it's just like the positioning.
Right.
At least a dumbbell.
But it's easier to position them in a hex bar than a barbell.
100%.
Yeah.
But a single leg would be really useful. Like I would say a single leg RDL would be incredibly useful for a basketball player.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that I find extremely beneficial is
because even if you're working on it,
Yeah.
But even if you're working on that, and yes, a single leg RDL, because people are going to be like, that's super technical. But even just working on the technique still teaches them core and foot stability.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And also knee stability.
They need. Yeah, and knee stability.
That's a big thing.
True.
And when you look at
a lot of it.
And that's extremely important because like when you think about it, what's the most common? I don't have a number on this, so don't hit me. I'm just strictly from observation.
I won't strike you.
Yeah. The most common injuries in basketball is lower back.
Yeah.
Is knee.
Yeah.
And ankle.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's all.
And you could argue a lot of that could be, for lack of a better word, fixed with like a single leg RDL.
If somebody could do
on all those things,
a perfect single leg RDL on both sides, and it's fairly symmetrical, then a lot of those injuries, those non-contact, non-contact injuries, and even contact, they're better off through. But some things aren't avoidable.
You can't completely, make someone invulnerable to injuries.
Yeah,
but you can put yourself in the best position
Give
to
yourself
avoid that.
good odds.
Give yourself good odds.
Well, yeah, you strengthen up. I mean,
Yeah.
you strengthen up your muscle and tendons capacity to withstand the shit that's coming at it
Yeah.
consistently, right? So, yeah, at the end of the day, that's going to only help.
Yeah.
But I like your point, Dan, about like, and even what you guys were kind of saying just in general was like the technique work for a single leg RDL is going to be way more translatable than the technique work that you would be putting in to do a barbell deadlift, right? Because it's just, at the end of the day, you're using that foot stability that you might not be focusing on as much with a bilateral deadlift. And like,
once again, nothing wrong with the barbell deadlift.
Of course, yeah.
It's just knowing what you're
The best use of your time.
The best use of your time
priorities.
for that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 100%.
And
Like
sports is different than just teaching
you're-
somebody to move.
Yeah.
Because they have to have a large section of their volume be skills.
Yeah. Like
And playing the game.
If you're powerlifting, that's great.
Right.
I'm not going to have you train like a basketball player
Right.
to be a power lifter.
Yeah.
Just like I'm not going to have a power lifter. I'm not going to have like a basketball player train like a power lifter.
Even if you're just trying to have somebody lose weight, you still could do barbell stuff.
Yeah.
Or just get stronger.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a lot of volume where they're doing other skills and they're in game situations, and you probably have them for a lot longer too.
I am a big believer in isometric and eccentrics when it comes to training athletes.
Yeah,
I think it makes yourself more body aware, and the better
Different
the athlete
phases.
understands their body, I feel like the better the athlete they are.
I think it's important to
So-
teach people those things anyway.
Well, in general,
Yeah. Because anytime you're trying to teach a movement, they should understand the most difficult part of a movement, right? And then have an isometric there, right, when you're teaching it.
I will say eccentrics, as far as eccentrics go, right? The one thing that I would be concerned about is over programming eccentrics.
Just because of how exhausting they are?
Yeah,
on the body?
because of the actual like higher percentage of muscle tissue damage that eccentrics
But once
take
again, it
out.
comes down to
So-
programming.
But it's
just
all
so
just, it
everybody
comes down
knows.
to good programming.
Just so everybody knows,
That's why you program.
eccentrics is when the muscle you're using gets longer. So like if I'm doing a bicep curl, then this would be the concentric movement. For those that you can see on YouTube,
Subscribe to our YouTube channel.
If not, then I'm bringing the dumbbell up towards my shoulder, and then so flexing my elbow, and then on the eccentric would be me lowering the weight and bringing it down.
Yeah.
Towards
Isometric
the
would be
floor.
just if you're holding it in place.
Yeah,
right?
and you would usually
contract
hold it
your
at
bicep.
one of the most difficult points of the list, but you could isometric almost anywhere. But
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd usually try to find the most difficult part of the lift.
Yeah.
On the part that you really wanted to either teach the person or where they were using the most strain for isometric, because that's when the muscle's not changing length in either way. So it's not neither shortening or lengthening. So they're just holding in place.
Yeah, but I agree. I think isometrics can be incredibly useful. Eccentrics too, for sure. Once again, it comes down to like smart programming, right? I think that's the one thing I want people to understand out of this before we got into that though, was essentially basically making sure that nobody goes in the same idea that Dan had when he was in high school, where they're just like, I'm just going to train the shit out of eccentrics, right? And start doing like all of these really, tons of eccentric stuff. And next thing
His
you know,
weight
they're
room
just...
coaches probably didn't even know what eccentrics were.
No, they didn't know
Okay,
anything. They were some of the worst coaches
Shots fired.
ever. I don't care. They were terrible, and I feel like they ruined kids' careers and stuff. I bench pressed, no lie, every other day, which is fine. But
Every other day?
Every other day, 3 times a day.
wild.
3 times a day. That's the more wild part.
That's wild.
Yes. I would work out in weight class, and then I would work out after school or after sports. So usually after lacrosse or whatever I was doing, and then I would go home and I would bench press.
That's the irony of the fact that you're taking away from your bench presses maximal like strength and recovery so much by just bench pressing that much.
I would never get sore. Obviously,
you're
my muscles. Right?
you're young.
Yeah,
you recover.
But my
yeah.
muscles, like no, I did so much volume. It was so hard to get me sore out. But I always thought that soreness equaled growth.
Yeah.
And then my bench press never went up. After it hit a certain point, and then it never went up, no matter how hard I tried, because it was just I was just exhausting myself all the time.
You know, personal movement I think is important. Is the lateral either lunge or squat.
Oh yeah, for
When
sure.
it comes to training, especially in basketball,
Because you need to be able to create those angles, that shin to torso angle, and be able to do it through resistance and power.
I mean, think about it too. Like when you look at a crossover, especially you look at the people the best at crossover.
Yeah.
They load that way. You
Yeah.
load in a way of a lateral squat, and then you bring it back quick. So if you're not, think about it. If you can load that with weight, what is it going to be without weight and with the ball?
Agreed.
You know what I mean? So it's just stuff like that.
That's why my crossover is so nasty, Luke Hillman.
Obviously, like if you want to get technical, core strength is always an important factor for every athlete.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I don't really.
I feel like we could, we could use that about every single athlete.
Anti-extension, anti-rotation, rotation, anti-lateral flex. We can go through all of that.
Yeah.
That's all important. For sure.
But definitely.
But if you can do 1,000 crunches, then you're
the best basketball player.
Best basketball player in all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I doubt Jordan could.
No, he couldn't.
Come at me, Jordan.
LeBron James could though, because he's much better.
I do think
just
too.
kidding.
The biggest thing too is like with the weightlifting is you make yourself just so much more durable.
Yeah,
and that was one of the biggest things too that Jordan brought up was one of the things that got him in the weight room was because he was getting beat up.
Yeah.
And what made him
people would purposely beat him up.
Yeah, and so like he wouldn't
had
tell
to play
you.
my Pistons.
He's like
Bash Brothers.
He's like I had to do this to take my game to the next level. And I mean, also too, from another standpoint, when you look at especially youth athletics and basketball right now, the big circuit is the AAU circuit, and all the AAU circuit is game after game after game after game. So it's so taxing on the body.
Yeah.
So at least the stronger you get, the more you're able to take that mileage than someone who honestly does not work on their body. They will break down. They will break down. It's not a matter of if, it's will.
For AAU? Is it constantly going, or
the off season would be the school season? So typically
really?
those people
sometimes,
are playing,
but sometimes they have leagues that they play in.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But I mean the game. I mean it's so many games.
It is.
I mean that was like
that's a whole other issue.
That was like me for soccer.
AAU's somebody makes an S ton of money.
It used to be
off of AAU basketball.
Yeah, it's really transformed into
a moneymaker.
Yeah, big time.
That's interesting.
It used to be more of an exclusive thing. It's not anymore.
Yeah, it's like, and you know who I bet it would
like
be
AAU.
I bet it's the same people that run like college athletic programs, like the SEC and stuff, is reaching into AAU, and they probably all draw money from there.
Yeah, it used to be like if you played AAU, like it was like a big thing. Now it's what team in AAU do you play for?
Yeah,
because I remember one of my I want to say my classmates from high school, I think my year, made like some big AAU team in Seattle. Yeah. And that was big. Like he was like he grew like he was a 6'6" guy when he was a freshman. Yeah. Huge too. Not just like 6'6" and skinny. He was huge. When he was 14 years old. So he's playing for some big name AAU. Had like a couple actually interestingly enough, ironically, had a couple of injuries that really took and derailed his career. But yeah, it was one of those things where I just remember him very specifically, like making that AAU team, and it was like the biggest thing in the world because it was so elite. AAU is so elite, and that's actually, it's funny because until you said that just now, I still thought, this is how much I don't pay attention to high school basketball, I still thought AAU was like the elite of the elite.
No, it's 100% what team you play for.
Okay.
So if someone says they play AAU, it really means nothing to me.
Yeah.
It just depends what team you play for.
So what's
I'm not going to shout out teams. Yeah,
I'm not saying you should shout out teams, but do they have like, how many like teams are there, out of curiosity, that are
AAU
like,
teams?
Yeah. Well, no, not total. Like teams that would be like worth shouting out. Are there like 100?
I don't know the number.
I'm just genuinely curious. I don't know anything about this.
You'd probably have we're shouting out on a national level.
Yeah, just like on a national level. Like what team does Bronny play for?
I wouldn't know all the national ones.
Yeah.
Local ones, obviously more. And I remember the big ones when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's a whole nother subject.
Okay.
To be honest with you. But I just wanted to touch that because that is what it is now. It's miles.
Yeah.
The miles that people are playing now is more than honestly
it's ever
in
been.
Recent generations.
Yeah.
It is, and I've talked to parents
Other than
about
somebody was just playing a lot of pickup.
yeah,
like
and I've talked to parents
games,
about this, and a lot of parents recognize this.
Yeah, of course.
Baseball has the same problem.
Do they?
Too. Oh yeah. I guess most.
I would say most youth sports at this point are probably
I don't know.
getting to that point.
I would say
Football
basketball
probably hasn't changed too much, but
yeah, basketball and baseball.
I had
the two that
days-
it's just like it's just nonstop.
And it's more
I mean,
now.
soccer's the same way. It was even when I was in high school, like I was nonstop. Like what you guys just described for
I
soccer.
potentially would
I
play
was doing the same
5
thing.
games a day.
5 games
In a day.
in a day.
For
okay,
certain
yeah, I
AAU
definitely wasn't
tournaments.
doing that.
That's a real thing.
Okay, actually, tournaments, yes, there would actually be times in soccer where we'd
Yeah.
have tournaments in the summer and stuff.
Yeah.
Where we would have like 3-4.
But you go to like a lot of these big, whatever you want to call them, like AAU meets.
Yeah.
you could be playing all freaking day.
Yeah, that's crazy. So tons of wear and tear.
Yeah, tons of wear and tear.
That's why I want to own. I just want to own a facility that has basketball courts and like soccer fields and some baseball fields, and then have your own vendors.
Yeah.
On there, dude. You just rack it up.
I was about to say, so if anybody has an airplane hangar that they want to give us,
Yeah, give us, and
Give
then
us,
also a couple
specifically.
$1 million as well.
Yeah,
I will
sponsor-
make you
also
way
sponsor
more than
us.
that. Way more than that.
Yeah.
Way more than that.
But yeah, so I mean, I feel like, do you guys have any other questions? Any other thoughts on this?
Besides really getting into AAU
Yeah, take
or
that out. For
NBA
more
and the
the
Bash
physical-
Brothers, you should look up the Bash
Oh,
Brothers, and
one
you'll see a
thing-
lot of highlights of Michael Jordan getting hammered by
I mean,
him.
I've
like
seen
on
I've seen
purpose.
plenty of
One
old NBA stuff. Yeah.
one thing I think is extremely important that I actually want to touch on is leverages. When you're dealing with basketball players, you're typically dealing with players that are taller than your average person.
Yeah.
So you have to understand leverages when it comes to weightlifting. So I'm not going to have a 6'7" dude pull their trap bar off the floor.
Yeah.
You're going to have to elevate it. And I know it sounds common sense to us,
But to
but
others, yeah.
to others, you don't see that.
Yeah, because
So
you do get some long-limbed
You do.
individuals.
And so it's another reason too why it's like, I remember
Although a lot of times they have long arms too.
it's like, oh, Kevin Durant can't bench this much. Well, he has to drop the weight. How many feet
yeah.
to get? I mean, obviously
He has
it's
a
easier for me because I don't have, but
a
like
7 foot something wingspan.
yeah. So I also think too, when it comes to basketball, you have to assess strength differently than
Yeah.
you do overall. Say even in football or even just weightlifting in general.
Yeah, I guess that it would
Oh
be-
yeah, no,
It's
it
like-
makes complete sense.
I personally,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you have any pushback on that, but I feel
No,
like,
I'm a big believer in limb length and stuff
Yeah.
like that for sure.
and then also like the
I mean, I
difference-
have monkey arms, so it affects. But I mean, even those guys more.
Yeah.
So like Durant, he's not. It's not like he has like some huge chest to go along with his super
Yeah.
long arms.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
he
yeah.
does have a long way
yeah,
to
it's
go.
a long way to go down.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also too, like, you know, it also depends, you know, what your game is. How do you play
Yeah.
basketball?
Yeah.
I mean, overall, I would say Durant probably, I don't know what his training's like, but I would say he probably focuses more on just getting his body overall healthy and strong, just
Yeah.
for the durability factor.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't need to be super,
No.
like I would say from a
Crazy
weightlifting-
strong,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's just
I
got to
mean,
be
he's-
have some durability.
Yeah.
And then be able to be
Yeah.
fast and quick and powerful.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it kind of comes back to what you're saying at the beginning of the podcast too, which is today's day and age for basketball. It sounds like that's kind of the transition that you're seeing more and more in general for most players. Like that's what they kind of should be doing, right?
Yeah, it's all. But the one thing I noticed too, and I actually was listening to a podcast on this. He was talking about it. It's a big basketball one, and he was talking about how like a lot of NBA players train. If you notice, there's a lot of injuries in the NBA. Like I would say, soft tissue injuries and stuff like that. It's because now they're doing these movements, but they're not programmed well. So you're doing these moves. So typically, you're probably playing basketball for 2 hours. Then you're going to go into like a weightlifting session. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Your body is so taxed already.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Then they're
doesn't
gonna,
make sense at all.
Single leg hop like
Yeah.
200 times.
Yeah,
And be like,
I
oh,
mean,
well, it's a good movement. But
when
like,
we're-
well, 200 times, maybe that's not.
Yeah, when we're in
That's
like
right now.
when we're in session and we're working on explosiveness, we're working on strength, power, all that. That's very taxing there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to, I mean, you have to really monitor the rest. And I mean, I feel like that's something that's actually probably I mean, you could argue on a lot of different things, but rest is taken out of the equation too much.
All the time.
Oh, for
I think
sure.
one of the most important things that you can do as a strength coach for athletes is know their schedule
Yeah.
and understand their volume. Right? If I have somebody and we're working out, and maybe they don't do a ton of conditioning practice
Yeah.
or whatever it is, and they do a lot of skills or whatever, I might do some more conditioning with them and more volume. But then they might hit a tournament weekend. Right, I need to dial that way back, and I need to know that ahead of time so I can get them ready for that tournament weekend. Right, I need
sure.
to know their season versus their off season. If maybe they're playing, maybe they're not in season for football anymore, but if they're wrestling and they're like, oh, I don't care that much about wrestling, they're still wrestling.
Yeah.
So that's still a lot of volume. I gotta understand that.
I was gonna say a lot
Yeah.
of kids in general, right, are doing two sports.
Yeah.
If they're not, at the highest level, or as you were talking about, like if they're not doing that AAU crazy schedule, right, they're probably playing something else, while they're off season, right?
Yeah, even
So-
then they play. A lot of times they play another sport too.
Yeah, I mean, they sometimes just go back
their
and
schedules
forth,
are
which is
packed,
nuts.
man.
Well, because like you have this
Yeah.
impression that the more is better, and that's not necessarily the case. It's just like
Yeah.
anything, you have too much of anything.
Yeah, I mean, think about the way that I bench pressed. I was
Yeah.
always like, that's like classic example of work harder, not smarter.
Exactly, exactly.
Absolutely.
Which still is my motto.
That's good.
It's a good life balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good point though. I think that there's to be quite honest with you, one of the things I would say, just looking from a vacuum into the current state of basketball, is you have to, first of all, you have to be aware of how much these guys are playing in general, right? Even at the collegiate and NBA level.
Yeah.
They're hitting that court a lot, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be really, really, really aware of that consistent volume, right? And the constant inflammation that they're going to be putting on all of the muscles that are being used consistently, right? So if we're talking about Achilles tears, for instance, right, is one that you like to use as an example because you're constantly jumping, right? You're just constantly plantar flexing, which means essentially you're just pushing off the ground like that, right? For all the YouTube subscribers, hopefully you can kind of see that. But that's it, right? You're
Look at them
constantly
Crocs.
pushing. Yeah, you like my Crocs? Anyways, so you're doing those movements so repetitively, and especially with the high volume, and even at that young age, right? People think they're like, they always say they're young, they'll bounce back, they'll recover quickly. And even we were just saying that about Dan earlier, right? Like, yeah, you're going to recover quickly, but it's still going to have some sense of damage, right? People are getting injured young.
Why?
I did have a bunch of
Why not
pain and
teach
injuries
those good
too.
habits at that young age?
Yeah.
I think it's important as if you're as a fitness coach or trainer for these athletes that you have to take in the grand scheme,
Yeah.
the long game, the lifespan, the career, what they're going to do. Honestly, do I want to get the people I train get ready for their season? Yes. But am I looking at that season as the end all be all? No.
But are you always going to wear a purple shirt on the podcast? Yes.
Yes.
Well, I've only been on twice, so
That's good.
So, but no, you're right. Is that it's
a good
like,
point. It's a very
like,
good
hey, but even I would say like, it's like setting that goal, right? Let's say you have a kid come to you at like 12 years old. They're like, hey,
I didn't say it.
hey, I want a front squat. Yeah. They're like, I want to play college basketball, right?
Yeah.
Whatever level that might be, that's their dream. They want to play college basketball. I think it's important that you instill it like initially, right? The ideas and sensibility of smart training principles throughout that by managing their volume, right? And if they really want to play college basketball, and this is maybe a little bit of a hot take, I don't know, but it's like, hey, if you're trying to play lacrosse, football, and basketball, but you really want to play college basketball, that's your favorite sport, maybe knock those other two out. Maybe just go to two instead of the
I feel like
three.
it's a different topic because I've
Yeah.
been going for this for a while, but I do agree with that.
Yeah, it's like a
there
load
comes-
management.
There comes a point, and I think that decision needs to come at high school. There comes a point where you have to put all your focus into one thing.
Yeah, I disagree.
And no, let me finish. Let me finish my point though, because you have to put all your focus in one thing because you know what the other athletes are doing. That exact same thing. What do you want to do? Yes, no, yes.
No, dude. Oh, wait.
No.
You're so you're saying that once you hit the high school level, you should start dialing it back to one sport?
No, but you shouldn't do 3 or 4 sports. That's ridiculous.
Oh, you're saying like dial it back a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Because there's
That's
a lot of
ridiculous.
study on multiple sports in high school and
Yeah.
how important that is.
I mean,
but
but also, too, when
and a
this-
lot of your great athletes now
Yeah.
played multiple sports in high school and even still in college. But I do think at the college level, you do start to have some.
college level for sure
Yeah.
is like most of the big ones are staying with one sport,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's 96% probably, I'm guessing here, but are probably playing just one
Yeah,
sport.
you could do another as a hobby.
Yeah,
But we're
exactly.
talking about basketball. Basketball is a year-round sport.
But
A year-round sport.
so is baseball. So is soccer. They're both
Basketball is the longest season, the longest in-school season. If in high school, it's the longest season. And then you have AAU, you got spring, summer, and fall leagues.
Yeah, but you
I did
also-
all that.
You also have the same thing for baseball.
Yeah, but it's not as big. Like, I mean, literally, like, the baseball season, though, the actual season, like, in professional,
Hockey
it's
too.
long.
Hockey has a crazy season.
Hockey,
And they have a
hockey
bunch
has
of,
like a really similar season
yeah,
to,
and they have a
to
bunch of
basketball.
bunch of leagues too.
Yeah.
But they don't. But
But I'll be honest with you, a lot of the hockey players I knew growing up only played hockey.
Yeah, that was I was gonna say, but hockey's kind of a hockey
A lot of
thing.
ones that I've-
Some of them played lacrosse, like because
Yeah.
I played hockey. Most of my teammates, the reason I actually had to stop playing
my
hockey.
friends played lacrosse and hockey.
But that's
too.
correlation, though.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? There is some similarities between lacrosse and hockey. I would say a lot of similarities.
But the argument would be, and the research goes with sports that aren't as similar. Like you want kids in developing ages, and in high school, those are all developing ages. You want them to play multiple sports, and the ones that play multiple sports are hurt less, and they're more successful
But
at higher
all right,
levels.
so that honestly, I'll be honest with you.
You're always honest, you're
I
honestly.
only played basketball in high school, and I was not hurt all the time.
But then your back was ruined
But why was my back ruined?
because you played basketball. all the time.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Why was my back
I don't know.
ruined?
I don't know.
Because it's the same thing. Why it was ruined when we met.
I was gonna
Because
say
you wore a weight
weightlifting.
belt one time while you were
I was weak and deficient in certain areas.
and super tight in other
Yeah.
areas. Yeah.
So then also too, I could actually make an argument that if they're weight training consistently, that's a sport in itself. So if you're weight training and you're doing that and you're also playing basketball, you could argue that's the two sports right there. You could make that argument.
That's an interesting argument. Actually, that is a very interesting argument. I don't.
Right though?
Yeah, that's.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you could.
I'm not against
Because otherwise, like, then you would be like, because some people go, okay, I have to look at this study again, because then that makes it really interesting. Then it's like, well, then if you don't count weightlifting as a sport,
Yeah.
then do you count track as a sport?
but
Right? Because then it's
yeah.
like you're doing a lot of the same things.
I was gonna say so.
What I do want to like
Go
to
ahead,
that
yeah.
point though, like I do believe at the young age you should be involved in anything you can.
Yeah.
All
Really
I'm saying
young.
is,
Yeah.
all I'm
Yeah.
saying is as we're getting to that, people are getting college offers for at least, like I said, for basketball. They're committing as freshmen in high school.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're looking at you early.
Which I don't like.
I don't. Well, that's
Yeah.
another issue. But
Yeah.
I'm just talking about, like I said, like our job.
Yeah.
What's our? And it's like if someone came to us and it's like, well, we got to get them ready.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, like that's the way I look at it. I totally believe you should be. And if you're playing another sport in high school, I don't think that's bad either. I'm just saying if you're talking about like if you're trying to hit the highest level, and even the highest level is like Division One. Division One basketball, that's tough.
That's elite as hell.
That's it.
it
I
is.
mean, that
Yeah.
is
Division
tough.
One anything.
Yeah,
Division one
100%,
anything.
100%, 100%. So like, I'm not even take professional out of it. Like you're all right, Division One. That is already a different animal, and those guys are dialed in. They've been playing. They play.
But also, I think that most of those guys, like most of the ones that you could pick anybody that's successful, and I bet you they played multiple sports in high school.
At some point, but that's the thing is that I like at what point did they stop? And so I'll use myself as an example, right? And I'm not a D1 anything.
Well,
I'm not,
so you don't count?
I was gonna say, so I don't really count for this study, but I was playing hockey and soccer at the same time, right? I was trying to juggle them both my freshman year, and that just did not work. And also, I went into a higher level club team, and we had off-season conditioning. Right, that was 3-4 times a week. We worked with our own strength and conditioning coach for my club team for soccer. That was my other stuff, right? So there was just like a certain amount of load management that I needed.
Can you look up stuff, Michael?
Well,
Can you look up? I just want to think about like some.
What percentage of how many?
I just
want to
just like there's just like throw out athletes. So like, what did Trevor Lawrence play baseball? I don't know why that's in my head. He
in
seems like-
college.
no,
or
in high school.
Yeah, I think he did play baseball in high school.
Look up Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence in high school.
I mean,
sports.
so that's the thing is football players are unique though, right? I think football players are a really
What
unique
sport?
one
You want
because they
basketball?
don't have
Well,
the
then
same
pick-
off season.
Oh no. All right, that's I don't know. I'm
The
just always
most
saying football
common-
because I love football.
Yeah.
Now bring up a basketball player.
Hold on. The most common sport that basketball players always play is football. It's football and basketball seem to be
The two interjoined.
relationships. But a lot of these guys who are playing that, they're not playing the beat up positions. They'll play quarterback or they'll play wide receiver. How hard are they really getting hit in high school? I mean, that is true. And you know who played
Well,
tight?
a lot
you
of
know
times those aren't. It's not passing.
Yeah, there we go.
But that's the
passes
thing.
on it, too.
But I'm just saying, like, and also too, like,
But I don't know if they don't. I don't think that they do that on purpose.
I don't think that a
And
lot
that's
of the
just how it
young
works.
I don't think that a lot of the young guys are really playing like high level football in that sense of like as I said, football is different because they have more of a distinguished off season in high school, so that allows them to play like
let's take
basketball and
that's
stuff
what I'm
like
saying.
that.
Let's take a
there's one
basketball.
scenario I do want to pull up that is to this. Is that if I'm
That would go with my argument, though, that you should that a lot of your most successful guys play multiple
But
sports.
that's just football. That's just football.
I'm talking
'Cause
about
they don't
basketball
have,
players.
They don't have club football. They don't have
I'm
like
talking about
club
basketball
football like
players.
that.
You're playing those
Right?
basketball players are all playing high school basketball, club basketball, and then they're playing football.
Are they though? That's the thing. I
They're
don't think it's
definitely-
high. I don't think there's much.
If those,
not much
those
of a
guys
percentage.
that are in
like
the
the
NBA,
elite
almost
level
all of them,
guys-
would you argue like a large percentage of them played
Dude,
club basketball plus high school basketball?
I do, but
for
also
sure.
in the NBA, you're talking about the freakish of freak athletes, and we take that with a grain. We take that almost with a grain of salt.
Oh, I guess that's.
I mean, we're talking about
because then your study,
small
then your
percent.
study is taking like the best athletes in
Yeah.
the world,
This
where
day
not
and age-
everybody can do anything that they can do.
Yeah.
this day and age.
That's also a different argument too.
This day and age. I mean, even like your role NBA player can fly out of the gym.
We need
Yeah.
to
Fly.
We need to have one of our podcasts coming up needs to have this involved with like the youth sports culture in general.
we could definitely
I think
do
would be
that.
an excellent one, and we should have somebody that's super involved in it.
We do need to find somebody who's like, I don't know, like maybe like a high level director of some type.
Well,
of
yeah,
like,
we have somebody in our network.
gonna
I'm
say,
sure
I
we
don't
can
know.
find somebody.
But to kind of bring this back in a little bit,
Yeah.
I think the overarching point is like when I look at it, if I think what you said, like what your goal is, if you have this goal in mind, you should
Yeah.
stay focused 110% to that sport.
Yeah.
So what I mean is 100%, like what I mean is if you have, let's say your sophomore kid, Jack, good old Jack Gilbert,
Jack Gilbert.
All right,
He's almost
is-
sophomore. He's fifth grade.
prolific basketball player.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. Sophomore, and the coach from say any D1 school, let's just say, or even any college coach, right? Comes up and it was just like
Calipari.
We like we like don't,
Well, that one
we
goes-
like,
I
we
won't say
like-
anything
we like
terrible
we
'cause
like
Not a
we
super fan
like
of his.
your son. We think he could really work in our program.
I almost had a terrible joke. Continue.
Just let me finish.
Sorry.
All right.
That's why I bring it everywhere.
And he's going to be like, all right, cool. So you're doing this during the season, your basketball season. It's like, what are you doing
In your
on your
off
off season? It's like, well, I'm playing soccer. He's
they're
probably
not-
going like, that's cool. You're staying in shape. You know what I mean? Get some footwork in that. But why aren't you working on your craft for basketball?
And
Why aren't
I
you-
seriously, you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be
I'm
still
not
doing
saying-
something year round.
yeah, and I'm
especially
not-
with something as technical as a shot,
Now, to your point, 100%.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, to your point, too,
because
it's
you
like,
can lose your shot in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Nope. I mean, yeah, easily in
Dude,
2 weeks.
it's-
Yeah,
and that's what makes these players so good. When you watch, like, all these NBA players, they shoot every day.
Steph Curry.
Yeah, they
Huge
shoot
example
every
of it,
day.
yeah.
And so, no, like I said, like it's not like I'm saying if you play another sport, you're done. And I'm not
I
saying
see
that
what
by
you're
any
saying.
means.
I
I'm
see what
not
you're
saying that. I think what I guess I was looking at is like to maximize your chances,
Yeah.
Your potential.
your potential.
as I've
You should
finally
be
got
able
that
to
word.
go.
Keyword.
Yeah.
You should be
Yeah.
able to go all in.
I got you.
That's all.
Yeah, you do
because
wanna
I
be-
do
agreed.
think coaches respect that.
Yeah.
And also too, like I said, even like with the study you're mentioning, do they even take in consideration?
I need to
weightlifting?
look at. I do want to talk about that because no,
I do too.
I need to, but
In
I
the
need to.
future.
I need to look back into
Yeah.
that
because they probably don't even
study.
take into
because
consideration.
it was a big study done, and it really it was huge, even with
But look how
doctors and physical
popular
therapists.
weightlifting for sports has come just in the last 10 years.
No, I think that's a really interesting.
You know what I mean? I mean, it is
and something
jump.
I didn't even
Yeah.
think about that.
It's jump,
because
jump.
then again, would you? If you don't count weightlifting, would you count track?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it's like
Well, that's the
unless
thing. It
they're,
all
like,
comes down to
doing
volume at the
discus
end of the
and-
day, right?
and
It
shot
all
puts.
comes out to
Yeah.
Those things are a little different.
But I totally
Yeah.
believe, like, just to
and
hammer,
a
like,
javelin throw. That's one of them.
just to
Are we
reiterate,
just listing track things now?
Yep.
just to reiterate,
Yeah.
I think honestly, getting involved in as many team sports growing up is extremely important.
Yeah.
for sure.
So I totally believe that.
How many? Okay, out of curiosity, how many team sports did you guys play when you were really young?
Honestly, too.
So I played. So when I was like really young, like 4, 5, 6, 7
Yeah.
years old, I played t-ball, soccer, basketball, and floor hockey.
Yeah.
Right. So I was doing a bunch all the time, like just constantly moving. Right. So I narrowed it down pretty quickly when I turned 11, just to hockey and soccer. Right. But like regardless, like most kids are playing like a bunch of different sports. At least for you said 2. Which 2 were those?
Baseball and basketball.
There we go. And you stuck with basketball.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Dan.
I played a ton of basketball, soccer.
Played everything.
Yeah, I played everything
Yeah,
under
yeah.
the sun. basketball, soccer, baseball. Then in middle school, I also did like intramural street hockey, and I did flag football. At the same time, I was doing all those other ones.
And he can be, and he's probably good at all those because you're a good athlete.
Thanks.
But
man.
at the end of the day, we want that person to be great at something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be great at everything.
No.
And you have to
I tried, believe me.
Oh,
it doesn't
we all, yeah. But you
work.
have to be able to.
You're right. You have to dial in something.
Dial in.
Yeah. At some point, you're right. As you start
because your
to get
opponent
older and more
is
serious,
going to be dialing in.
for sure.
That person trying to make that roster spot potentially is going to be dying in.
And actually, in high school, my
Dialing
lacrosse
in.
coach got mad at me because I would miss some indoor games. So off-season games.
Yeah.
I missed some because I was playing indoor lacrosse, and then I was also playing basketball.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to say whatever, but I was the best player on our basketball team and our point guard. So if I didn't show up, we weren't a good enough team to. We were struggled. We struggled with a lot of things, but if I wasn't there, it was like guaranteed loss.
Yeah.
So I was like, I had to go play basketball because then otherwise, like I gave that commitment to my team.
Yeah,
I tried to tell my coach that he didn't want to hear any of it.
Yeah.
And it affected my position my senior year.
Yeah.
For sure. So
Because
that's the point.
Think
that
about
you're
those
trying
kids
to
that are
make.
on that lacrosse team.
Yeah.
A lot of those are dialed in, so that's their
Yeah.
sport. So like you're honestly hurting that team. Not saying that was your intention,
Right.
but like when you look back at it. But this is honestly a good subject for another podcast. So I don't think we should dive into this anymore. But I will say
We are starting to run out of time, though.
yeah. So we should kind of wrap up here.
Yep.
Our
Well,
basketball.
let me tell you how we're going to wrap up. We got a new sponsor for the podcast. Sir Charles Barkley actually reached out to me. He did not. It's wishful thinking. But Mike Tyson actually did. He didn't either. Sorry. Aleko, you want to take us away before I take us away?
Absolutely. So I will say, Dan, hate to do this to you, dude, but you forgot the FNX.
No, Mike's. We got that all figured out.
Do it?
Right?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, we do? For
Yeah,
sure?
we're gonna do
We're
what
gonna
you said
edit
before.
it in?
Because I don't want to mess anything up, and I love FNX Fitness, so I would not
There you
want. I like the greens, I like the protein blend.
Yeah. Can we just use my really long-winded, like, super greens thing? Which
You
I just
have
realized
the
I haven't
best
even drank of
relationship
it.
with them, so it's really up to you. Look at that shake up.
Look at those legs, more importantly.
I would say, look at those
Anyways.
Crocs.
They
More
are
importantly.
great Crocs. I will fight anybody who says bad things about Crocs. I love Crocs.
No, you won't, because I say bad things about them, and I wanted to roll today, and then you left me in the dust to go do schoolwork.
Well, I'm sorry.
It hurt my heart.
Yeah. We'll
And
get
also
our
my
chance.
jiu-jitsu game as well. Now I feel like I'm a
Speaking
week
of-
out.
Speaking of another sport. Anyways, so if you like today's episode, if you somehow managed to put together this puzzle of many different topics that we got on during this entire podcast episode, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Please like, subscribe everywhere that you find podcasts. Make sure that you subscribe on our YouTube channel under MadLab Performance. Whenever you subscribe, hit that little bell button. Man, I'm having a hard time with words today.
It's my fault.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you pass it on to me? Is
Yeah,
that
I
what's
did.
going on? Okay.
my fault.
Hit that little bell button so that every time we post a new episode or anything, you're gonna get that notification. That's just gonna make sure that we can get our content to you faster, and we all know you want that. Anyways, thank you so much, Dan. Take it away.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in to another episode of Luke Hillman and the Lab.